How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, November 15th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances from yesterday, Sunday, November 14th, 2021. And just taking a quick look at where we are at this point in the calendar year, with the MLB season over and basically awards left to come out. Football season is well into swing as the college football season is about a month away from being over. The actual NFL season is about 2 months from being over, as yesterday was the 10th Sunday of the 18-week NFL season, and the NBA has also gotten started underway as college basketball is about a week or two into its season. So we're going to circle through it, starting with college basketball performances from yesterday, starting with the 18th ranked basketball team in the nation. The Tennessee Volunteers hosted the East Tennessee State Buccaneers. Tennessee would end up beating East Tennessee 94-62, winning the game by 32 after they outscored East Tennessee by 23 in the first half, doubling their first half score actually, and then they outscored East Tennessee by 9 in the second half. The 18th ranked Tennessee Volunteers were led in scoring by their starting forward out of Finland, Olivier Nkamhwa. Sorry if I butchered the name, but Nkamhwa would finish with 23 points and 8 rebounds in 24 minutes. He will go on to shoot 9 for 14 from the field, a perfect 2 for 2 from 3, and he would end up shooting 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the 18th ranked Tennessee Volunteers are now 2-0. With this loss, the unranked East Tennessee State Buccaneers are 0-2. Taking a look at what went down with the 20th ranked team in the nation, the Florida State Seminoles faced off against the unranked Florida Gators at Florida, and the unranked Gators would beat the ranked Seminoles by 16 as Florida State outscored Florida by 2 in the first half. Florida outscored Florida State 43-25 in the second half in order to pick up this very big win. The 20th ranked Florida State Seminoles on the losing end were led by their starting forward out of Illinois, their senior Malik Osborne. Malik Osborne would go on to finish the game with 18 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals in 33 minutes. He shot 6 for 10 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, and 3 for 5 from the foul line. The unranked Florida Gators were led in points by their 2 forwards. Their starting senior Colin Castleton out of Florida would finish with 15 points, 16 rebounds, and 6 blocks in 33 minutes as he shot 5 for 9 from the field and 5 for 6 from the foul line. And then their other forward out of Maryland, Anthony Derugi, would go on to finish with 15 points for himself. He had 7 rebounds and 2 steals and 2 blocks as well in 36 minutes. He shot 5 for 8 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and he shot 4 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the unranked Florida Gators are now 2-0, and with this loss, the 20th ranked Florida State Seminoles are 1-1 this season. Now jumping to the 23rd ranked team in the nation, St. Bonaventure hosted the unranked Canisius Golden Griffins. St. Bonnie's would end up pulling away with a 69-60 win after they were outscored in the first half. They would outscore Canisius by 14 points in the second half in order to remain undefeated so far. The 23rd ranked Bonnies were led in scoring by their 2 guards. Their senior out of Michigan, Jaron Holmes, would go on to finish with 17 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 steals. He did all this in 35 minutes as he shot 5 for 10 from the field. And then their other starting guard, Kyle Lofton, would finish with 17 points. The senior out of New Jersey would finish with 5 rebounds and 2 steals, as well as 17 points. He shot 4 for 15 from the field and 8 for 9 from the foul line. With this win, the 23rd ranked St. Bonaventure Bonnies are 2-0 at this point in the season, and unranked Canisius is 0-3 thus far. Taking a look now at what's going on at the pro level with the sports, starting with the NFL, jumping out to Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys hosted the Atlanta Falcons. The Cowboys were able to beat the Falcons 43-3, outscoring Atlanta 36-3 in the first half and then shutting them out 7-0 in the second. The Atlanta Falcons were led by their elite starting quarterback, Matt Ryan, out of Boston College. He would complete 9 of his 21 passes as he threw for 117 yards and 2 interceptions. The Falcons' leading receiver was their first round pick, Kyle Pitts. He had 4 receptions for 60 yards. Their leading rusher was Wayne Gallman. He had 15 carries for 55 yards. He also had a reception for 21. That would be 76 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, Foyesade Alakun would be the Falcons leader in tackles and the game's leader in tackles, as he had 14 on the day. And then looking at the Cowboys on the winning end, they were led by their starting quarterback, Dak Prescott. He threw for 296 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for an additional 5 yards and a touchdown. That's 301 total yards of offense and 3 touchdowns. Their elite running back, Ezekiel Elliott, finished with 14 carries as he had 41 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He also had 3 receptions for 15 yards through the air. That would combine for 56 total yards of offense. Their leading carrier, Tony Pollard, had 42 yards on the ground and 56 yards through the air. That would be 98 total yards of offense for him. The Cowboys' leading receiver, CeeDee Lamb, had 6 receptions for 94 yards as he had both of the Cowboys' receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Micah Parsons and Jaron Kearse would finish with the team's lead in tackles as they both had 6. Parsons would have a sack for himself, and the team would finish with 3 interceptions as Jordan Lewis, Anthony Brown, and Trayvon Diggs would each gather 1 for themselves. With this win, the Dallas Cowboys are now 7-2, and with this loss, the Atlanta Falcons are now 4-5. Taking a look at what's going on one state away, or a couple states away, in Tennessee, as the Titans hosted the New Orleans Saints. The Titans outscored the Saints 13-6 in the first half. The Saints would outscore the Titans 15-10 in the second half, but the Titans would end up securing this one at the very end. The Saints would score a touchdown at the end with about a minute left, but they would not bring it any closer. That's how the game ended, essentially. On the losing end of this matchup, the New Orleans Saints were led by their starting quarterback, Trevor Siemian. He threw for 298 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Saints' leading carrier, Mark Ingram, had 14 carries for 47 yards and a touchdown. He would also have 4 receptions for 61 yards. That would be 108 total yards of offense for Mark Ingram, the former Heisman winner. The Saints' leading receiver was Deontay Harris. He had 3 receptions for 84 yards. And then on the defensive side of the ball, their elite cornerback, Marshawn Lattimore, would tie with Demario Davis and David Onyemata for the team high in tackles. They each had 6. Marcus Davenport would finish with 3 tackles as he would have both of the Saints' sacks for the day. And then looking at the Titans on the winning end, they were led by their starting quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill threw for 213 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for an additional yard and an additional touchdown. That's 214 yards of offense and 2 touchdowns attributed to Ryan Tannehill. And of course, there were 3 other, all 3 touchdowns were attributed to Tannehill. The Titans' leading receiver was Marcus Johnson. He had 5 receptions for 100 yards on the day. On the defensive side of the ball, Monty Rice would lead the team in tackles as he had 11 of them. Jeffrey Simmons out of Mississippi State would finish with 4 tackles as he had 2 of the team's 4 sacks. With this win, the Tennessee Titans are now 8-2, and with this loss, the New Orleans Saints are now 5-4. Taking a look now at what's going on in Indianapolis, the Colts hosted the Jacksonville Jaguars, and after the Colts outscored the Jags 20-9 in the first half, the Jags outscored the Colts 8-3 in the second half, but the Colts would keep it at arm's length, beating the Jaguars 23-17. The Jacksonville Jaguars were led by their elite rookie starting quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, who completed 16 of his 35 passes and threw for 162 yards. He also ran for an additional 33 yards. That's 195 yards for Trevor Lawrence on the day. Their leading carrier, Jamal Agnew, had 3 rushes for 79 yards as he had a touchdown on the day. Their second leading carrier, James Robinson, their elite running back, finished with 12 carries for 57 yards as he had a touchdown. He also had 4 receptions for an additional 27 yards. He would go on to finish with 84 yards on the day, and then the Jaguars' leading receiver, Dan Arnold, had 5 receptions for 67 yards. The Jaguars' leading tackler was Rayshon Jenkins. He had 7 on the day. And then on the Colts side of this matchup, their starting quarterback, former MVP candidate Carson Wentz, threw for 180 yards. The Colts' leading carrier was Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin. He finished with 21 carries for 116 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He also had 6 receptions for 10 yards through the air. He would finish with 126 total yards of offense for Indianapolis. Their leading receiver, Michael Pittman Jr., had 5 receptions for 71 yards on the day. The Colts' leading tackler, Bobby Okereke, finished with 8 tackles on the day. He would lead the team, and with this win, the Indianapolis Colts are now 5-5, and with this loss, the Jacksonville Jaguars are now 2-7 on the season. Jumping out to Boston, the New England Patriots went on to host the Cleveland Browns. The Patriots would go on to beat the Browns 45-7 as their rookie quarterback would lead them to a winning record, essentially. The Patriots would outscore the Browns 24-7 in the first half, and then they would shut the Browns out 21-0 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Cleveland Browns were led by their starting quarterback, Baker Mayfield, who threw for 73 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Case Keenum would go on as well as he threw for 81 yards for himself. The Browns' leading rusher, Dearness Johnson, had 19 carries for 99 yards, and then he also had 7 receptions and 58 yards through the air, giving him 157 total yards of offense. He was the team's leading rusher and receiver on the day. On the defensive side of the ball, Anthony Walker was the Browns' leading tackler on the day. Their elite defensive end, Myles Garrett, would only register 1 tackle, and it was a sack. On the winning end of this matchup, the Patriots were led by their starting quarterback, Mac Jones, their first-round pick out of Alabama. He threw for 198 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Patriots' leading rusher was Ramondre Stevenson. He had 20 carries for 100 yards as he had 2 touchdowns on the ground. He had 14 yards through the air, so that'll be 114 total yards of offense to go with his 2 rushing touchdowns. The Patriots' leading receiver, Kendrick Bourne, had 3 carries on the ground for 43 yards, and then he had 4 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. He would have 141 total yards of offense for the Patriots. The Patriots' 4th leading receiver, Hunter Henry, out of Arkansas, would finish with 4 receptions for 37 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Kyle Duggar would lead the team in tackles as he had 8 of them on the day. Dietrich Wise Jr. would finish 5th on the team in tackles as he had 4 of them. He would finish with a sack and a half. The Patriots would combine for 5 sacks. And then Kyle Duggar, in addition to leading the team in tackles, would finish with the team's only interception as he returned it 37 yards. With this win, the New England Patriots are 6-4. All 4 of their losses have come at home thus far this season. With this loss, the Cleveland Browns are now 5-5 as they are now 2-3 on the road this season, just to get a sense of where they are. But a big win in Gillette for the Patriots. Moving just a state over, the New York Jets hosted the Buffalo Bills. And in this AFC matchup, the Bills would get the best of the Jets, beating them 45-17. They would end up winning this game by 28 after they outscored the Jets 17-3 in the first half, and then the Bills outscored the Jets 28-14 in the second half. The New York Jets would be led by their starting quarterback, Mike White. He threw for 251 yards and 4 interceptions on the day. The Jets' leading receiver, Corey Davis, had 5 receptions for 93 yards. The Jets' leading tackler was C.J. Mosley out of Alabama, as he had 7 of them for the day. And Sherrod Neesman would finish with the team's only interception, as he had 2 tackles as well. On the winning end of this matchup, the Bills were led by their elite starting quarterback, Josh Allen. He would complete 21 of his 28 passes as he threw for 366 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He would end up running for 3 additional yards. That's 369 total yards of offense attributed to Josh Allen. The Bills' leading receiver was their elite wide receiver, Stephon Diggs. He would go on to finish with 8 receptions for 162 yards and a touchdown. Their second leading receiver, Gabriel Davis, had 3 receptions for 105 yards. The Bills' leading rusher, Devin Singletary, had 7 carries for 43 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He had 6 yards through the air, so that would be 49 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Poyer would lead the Bills in tackles as he would finish with 10 of them. And then they would finish with 4 interceptions as a team, as Levi Wallace, Taron Johnson, Jordan Poyer, and then their elite corner, Tre'Davious White, would each end up with an additional interception in their career tallies. With this win, the Buffalo Bills are now 6-3, and with this loss, the New York Jets are 2-7 on the season. Now taking a look at what's going on in Pennsylvania, just one state over, the Pittsburgh Steelers hosted the Detroit Lions, who still have yet to win a football game. And in this matchup, this game would end up in a 16-16 tie as neither team was able to score in overtime. But it will be the Steelers who tied the game in the fourth quarter that sent it into overtime in the very first place. And I guess starting with the visiting Lions, they were led by their starting quarterback, the former number 1 pick out of Cal, Jared Goff. He would throw for 114 yards on the day. Their leading carrier, DeAndre Swift, had 33 carries for 130 yards on the day. Their second leading, also through the air, DeAndre Swift had 3 receptions for 5 yards, so that's 135 total yards for DeAndre Swift. Their second leading rusher, Godwin Igwebuike, finished with 2 carries for 56 yards as he had a rushing touchdown for himself. And then the Lions' leading tackler on the defensive side of the ball was Alex Anzalone, as he had 9 on the day. Julian Okwara would finish with the team's only interception as he had 2 tackles. And then for the hometown Pittsburgh Steelers, their starting quarterback, the former Oklahoma State Cowboy Mason Rudolph, threw for 242 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also ran for an additional 36 yards. That's 278 total yards of offense for Mason Rudolph. The Steelers' leading carrier was their running back out of Alabama, Najee Harris. He had 26 carries for 105 yards on the ground. Their leading receiver, Deontay Johnson, had 7 receptions for 83 yards. And on the defensive side of the ball, Joe Sherbert will be the team's leading tackler. He had 13 of them. Alex Highsmith would finish with 11 tackles for himself. Their elite defensive tackle, Cameron Hayward, would finish with 5 tackles and 2 sacks. And then their elite defensive end, TJ Watt, would finish with 5 tackles as he had a sack for himself. With this tie, the Detroit Lions are 0-8-1, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are now 5-3-1, as these two are the only 2 teams that have tied a game so far in the 2021 season. Taking a look at what's going on in the nation's capital, the Washington football team hosted the reigning Super Bowl champs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in what was a matchup of the wild card round game from the first round of last year's playoffs. The Washington football team outscored Tampa Bay 16-6 in the first half before both teams would even in the third half. Washington would win this game 29-19. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the losing end were led by their goated starting quarterback, Tom Brady. Tom Brady would complete 23 of his 34 passes as he threw for 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He also had 2 rushing yards, so he had 222 yards with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, a bunch of 2s. Their leading carrier, Leonard Fournette, out of LSU, had 11 carries for 47 yards. He also had 8 receptions for an additional 45, so he had 92 total yards of offense for the Bucs. The Bucs' leading receiver was their elite wide receiver out of Texas A&M, Mike Evans. He finished with 2 receptions for 62 yards as he had a receiving touchdown on the day. On the defensive side of the ball, their elite linebacker out of LSU, Devin White, finished with 18 tackles and 2 sacks on the day. Levante David had 14 for himself. Antoine Winfield Jr. would finish with 11. And then on the winning side of this matchup, the Washington football team was led by their starting quarterback, Taylor Heineke. He would throw for 256 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for an additional 15. That would be 271 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher was Antonio Gibson. He had 24 carries for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He also had 14 yards on 2 receptions through the air. That's 78 total yards of offense. And Washington's second leading receiver, DeAndre Carter, would finish with 3 receptions for 56 yards and a touchdown on the day. On the defensive side of the ball, Cameron Curl would lead the team in tackles as he would finish with 8 of them on the day. Bobby McCain and William Jackson III would finish with the team's 2 interceptions. And with this win, the Washington football team is 3-6 on the season. With this loss, the defending Super Bowl champs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, are 6-3 on the season. Taking a look at what's going on in Phoenix, the Arizona Cardinals hosted the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers would end up beating the Cardinals 34-10 in Cam Newton's return to Carolina. The Panthers shut the Cardinals out 23-0 in the first half, and then they outscored Arizona 11-10 in the second. The Arizona Cardinals were led by their starting quarterback, former Heisman candidate out of Texas, Colt McCoy. He threw for 107 yards and an interception. The Cardinals' leading tackler on the defensive end was Jordan Hicks. He had 10 of them on the day, and Jalen Thompson would finish with the team's only interception. On the winning end of this matchup for the visiting Panthers, their starting quarterback PJ Walker would throw for 167 yards and an interception, as he also ran for an additional 6 yards. That's 173 total yards of offense for the starting quarterback. Their backup quarterback, former NFL MVP Cam Newton, would complete 3 of his 4 passes as he threw for 8 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for an additional 14 yards and a touchdown, so he had 22 yards and 2 touchdowns for himself. The Panthers' elite running back, Christian McCaffrey, was their leading rusher. He had 13 carries for 95 yards on the ground. He was their leading receiver as well, as he had 10 receptions for 66 yards. That's 161 yards for McCaffrey in the game. Their leading tackler was Shaq Thompson. He finished with 7 tackles and a sack. Hassan Reddick would finish with 4 tackles, as he had a sack and a half as well. And Dante Jackson would finish with the team's only interception. And with this win, the Carolina Panthers are now 5-5. And with this loss, the Arizona Cardinals are now 8-2 at this point in the season. Now taking a look at what's going on in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Chargers hosted the Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings would beat the Chargers 27-20. They would win by a touchdown after they outscored the Chargers 13-10 in the first half, and they outscored the Chargers 14-10 in the second. The Chargers were led by their elite young starting quarterback, Justin Herbert, out of Oregon. He would complete 20 of his 34 passes as he threw for 195 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He ran for an additional 22 yards, so that's 217 total yards of offense for him. Their leading rusher, Austin Eckler, had 11 carries for 44 yards. He also had 15 yards through 3 receptions through the air and the only receiving touchdown on the day. He had 59 total yards of offense with that touchdown. Their leading receiver, Keenan Allen, their elite wide receiver, had 8 receptions for 98 yards on the day. On the defensive side of the ball, their elite safety out of Florida State, and then Kazir White would finish with 12 tackles. Derwin James, Kazir White, each finished with 12 tackles, leading the Los Angeles Chargers in tackles on the day. And then looking at the Minnesota Vikings on the winning end, they were led by their starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins. He would end up throwing for 294 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their elite running back out of Florida State, Dalvin Cook, would have 24 carries for 94 yards as he had a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions for 24 yards as he would go on to finish with 118 total yards of offense for Minnesota. Their leading receiver was their elite wide receiver out of LSU, Justin Jefferson. He had 9 receptions for 143 yards. Their leading tackler was Eric Kendricks out of UCLA. He had 8 tackles and a sack, and then he also had the team's lone interception. With this win, the Minnesota Vikings are now 4-5, and now with this loss, the San Diego Chargers are now 5-4 at this moment in the season. And also, now jumping to the Mile High City, the Denver Broncos hosted the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles would end up beating the Broncos 30-13 on Devontae Smith's birthday. And the Eagles would outscore the Broncos 20-10 in the first half, and then they outscored the Broncos 10-3 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Broncos were led by their starting quarterback out of Louisville, Teddy Bridgewater. He threw for 226 yards on the day. Their leading receiver, Albert Obwigbunam, sorry if I butchered the name, he finished with 3 receptions for 77 yards on the day. The Broncos' leading tackler was Malik Reed, as he finished with 9 tackles, one of them being a sack. And then looking through the secondary, Justin Simmons would finish with 6 tackles, as he also finished with an interception on the day. Looking at the Eagles on the winning end of this matchup, they were led by Jalen Hurts out of Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts would throw for 178 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He also had 13 carries for 55 yards. He would go on to finish with 233 total yards of offense on the day. The Eagles' leading carrier, Jordan Howard, had 12 carries for 83 yards. Their second leading rusher, Boston Scott, would finish with 11 carries for 81 yards. He also had 2 receptions for 24 yards. He would go on to finish with 105 total yards on the day for Philly. And the Eagles' leading receiver was their elite young wide receiver who had his 23rd birthday yesterday, Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith would have his 4th reception for 66 yards on the day. And he had 2 touchdowns to double his season total. And on the defensive side of the ball, Anthony Harris would finish with 9 tackles on the day. With this win, the Philadelphia Eagles are now 4-6. With this loss, the Denver Broncos are now officially 5-5. Taking a look now at what's going on in Lambeau, the Green Bay Packers hosted the Seattle Seahawks as Russell Wilson returned. The Packers would end up winning this game 17-0, shutting out the Seahawks. It's very rare when you see a Russell Wilson team get shut out. The Packers they shut out the Seahawks 3-0 in the first half and 14-0 in the second half, as that's when both their touchdowns were scored in the fourth quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Seattle Seahawks were led by their elite starting quarterback, Russell Wilson. He would complete 20 of his 40 passes as he threw for 161 yards and 2 interceptions. He would also have 5 carries for 32 yards, so that's 193 total yards of offense for Russell Wilson. Their leading tackler on the defensive side of the ball was Jordan Brooks, as he had 13 of them. Jamal Adams, their elite safety, would finish with 11 tackles on the day for himself, as he also had the team's lone interception. On the winning end of this matchup, the Packers were led by their goated starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. He would complete 23 of his 37 passes as he threw for 292 yards and an interception. He would also have 8 rushing yards, so that would give him 300 total yards of offense. Both of the Packers' touchdowns were given to their leading rusher, A.J. Dillon. He had 21 carries for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 2 receptions for 62 yards, so he had 128 total yards of offense for Green Bay. The Packers' leading receiver was their elite wide receiver, Davante Adams. He had 7 receptions for 78 yards on the day. And then on the defensive side of the ball, before I get to that, the Packers' second leading carrier, Aaron Jones, their elite running back, had 7 carries for 25 yards on the ground. And he also had 61 yards on 4 receptions through the air. That is 86 total yards of offense for him. On the defensive side of the ball, Devondre Campbell and Chris Barnes would lead the team in tackles, as they each had 5 of them. And Adrian Amos and Kevin King would split the Packers' 2 interceptions. With this win, the Green Bay Packers are 8-2, as they are still undefeated at home. With this loss, the Seattle Seahawks are now 3-6 at this point in the year. Taking a look finally at what went down with Sunday Night Football, the Las Vegas Raiders hosted the reigning AFC champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs would end up beating the Raiders 41-14 as they outscored Las Vegas 17-7 in the first half, and they outscored Las Vegas 24-7 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Raiders were led by their starting quarterback, Derek Carr. Carr would throw for 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, as he also was the team's leading rusher with 18 yards. He finished with 279 total yards of offense for the Raiders. The Raiders' leading receiver was Bryan Edwards. He had 3 receptions for 88 yards as he would have one of the team's 2 receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Denzel Perryman would lead the Raiders in tackles as he had 11 of them. Jonathan Abram would finish second on the team as he had 10. And then on the winning end of this matchup, the Kansas City Chiefs were led by their elite starting quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. He would complete 35 of his 50 passes as he threw for 406 yards and 5 touchdowns. Their leading receiver was their elite tight end, Travis Kelce, as he finished with 8 receptions for 119 yards. Their second leading receiver was Darrell Williams, their leading rusher. He had 43 yards on the ground, and he had 101 yards on 9 receptions through the air and a receiving touchdown. He finished with 144 total yards of offense and a touchdown to his name. Their third leading receiver was their elite wide receiver, the quote-unquote fastest man in the NFL, Tyreek Hill. Their elite wide receiver would finish with 7 receptions for 83 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Armani Watts would lead the Chiefs in tackles, and he says he had 7 on the day, and Daniel Sorensen would have the team's lone interception. With this win, the Kansas City Chiefs are now 6-4, and with this loss, the Las Vegas Raiders are now 5-4, as the Chiefs still have yet to hit their bye week. But that's what the NFL is looking like. And taking a look at what's going on in the NBA, starting off in Staples Center, the Los Angeles Lakers hosted the San Antonio Spurs, and the Lakers were able to pull off a 114-106 win as they outscored the Spurs by 5 in the first half, and they outscored them by an additional 6 in the third quarter. The Spurs were led by their starting small forward, Keldon Johnson, in scoring. He finished with 24 points and 6 rebounds in 39 minutes. He shot 9 for 18 from the field and 6 for 9 from 3. Their starting point guard, DeJounte Murray, finished with 22 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, and 3 steals in 38 minutes. He would go on to shoot 9 for 20 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and he would go on to shoot 2 for 4 from the foul line. The Los Angeles Lakers were led in scoring by their elite starting power forward, Anthony Davis. He finished with 34 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists in 40 minutes. He shot 14 for 24 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, Russell Westbrook, would finish with 14 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, and 7 turnovers in 34 minutes. He shot 5 for 11 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Los Angeles Lakers are now 8-6. And with this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 4-9 at this point in the season. Taking a look now at what's going on in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Charlotte Hornets hosted the Golden State Warriors. The Hornets would end up beating the Warriors 106-102, as their fourth quarter would see them outscore the Warriors by 5 to overcome their 1-point deficit. On the losing end of this matchup, the Warriors were led in scoring by their starting small forward, the former number 1 overall pick, Andrew Wiggins. He finished with 28 points and 6 rebounds in 32 minutes. He shot 12 for 19 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3 as well. Their goated starting point guard, Stephen Curry, finished with 24 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists, and 3 steals in 36 minutes. Curry shot 7 for 22 from the field, 3 for 13 from 3, and a perfect 7 for 7 from the foul line. The Charlotte Hornets were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Miles Bridges. He finished with 22 points and 8 rebounds in 42 minutes. He shot 9 for 16 from the field, and he shot 2 for 3 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, LaMelo Ball, finished with 21 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals in 38 minutes. He shot 8 for 17 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and he made his only foul shot of the game. Their starting shooting guard, Terry Rozier, finished with 20 points and 2 blocks in 32 minutes as he shot 7 for 14 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Charlotte Hornets are now 8-7, and with this loss, the Golden State Warriors are 11-2. Moving a couple states south, the Atlanta Hawks hosted the reigning NBA champs Milwaukee Bucks. The Hawks were able to beat Milwaukee 120-110 as the Hawks outscored the Bucks by 14 in the first half. Looking at how the Bucks fared on the losing end, they were led in scoring by their Greek elite starting power forward Giannis Antetokounmpo. The reigning NBA All-Star Game MVP finished with 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists in 34 minutes. He shot 9 for 21 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and 7 for 12 from the foul line. And then on the winning end of this matchup, the Atlanta Hawks were led by their elite starting point guard, Trae Young. He finished with 42 points, 8 rebounds, and 10 assists alongside 5 turnovers in 32 minutes. Trae Young shot 16 for 26 from the field, 8 for 13 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Atlanta Hawks are now 5-9. They are 4-1 at home. And with this loss, the Milwaukee Bucks are now 6-8 at this point in the season. Taking a look at what's going on in Houston, the Houston Rockets, who came into this matchup with only 1 win, would leave this matchup with only 1 win as well, as the Phoenix Suns were able to beat them 115-89 in Houston. The Suns went on to outscore the Rockets by 19 points in the second half to virtually run away with what was a 10-point lead at halftime. The Houston Rockets on the losing end were led in scoring by their starting center, Christian Wood. He finished with 17 points and 8 rebounds in 27 minutes as he shot 7 for 12 from the field. And then the Phoenix Suns on the winning end were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard out of Kentucky, Devin Booker. He finished with 26 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals in 32 minutes. He shot 9 for 23 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. Alongside him, their elite starting point guard out of Wake Forest, Chris Paul, would finish with 15 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and 7 steals in 30 minutes. He shot 6 for 11 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and he made his only free throw attempt of the night. With this win, the Phoenix Suns are now 9-3. With this loss, the Houston Rockets are now 1-12 at this moment of the year. Taking a look at what's going on one state north, the Oklahoma City Thunder hosted the Brooklyn Nets as Kevin Durant was able to pull off a win in his homecoming. The Nets outscored the Thunder by 13 in the first half and then by another 11 in the second. The Oklahoma City Thunder on the losing end were led in scoring by their starting point guard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He would finish with 23 points and 6 rebounds in 30 minutes. He shot 8 for 14 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. And then their starting wing, Luguentz Dort, would finish with 20 points in 27 minutes. He shot 8 for 11 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and he would go on to make his only free throw attempt of the night. The Brooklyn Nets were led in scoring by their goated starting power forward, Kevin Durant. He finished with 33 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists in 34 minutes. He shot 9 for 17 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, and 13 for 14 from the foul line. Their point guard off the bench out of Australia, Patty Mills, would finish with 29 points and 2 steals in 31 minutes. He shot 10 for 16 from the field and 9 for 12 from 3. Their elite starting shooting guard out of Arizona State, James Harden, would finish with 16 points, 6 rebounds, 13 assists, and 3 steals, alongside 6 turnovers in 36 minutes. Harden shot 5 for 13 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. And their elite starting power forward out of Oklahoma, Blake Griffin, would finish with 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists in 23 minutes. as the former slam dunk champion finished shooting 3 for 6 from the field for the night. With this win, the Brooklyn Nets are now 10-4, and with this loss, the Oklahoma City Thunder, Kevin Durant's former team, is now 5-7 on the year. Taking a look at what went down in Denver, the Denver Nuggets hosted the Portland Trailblazers, and the Nuggets would end up beating the Trailblazers 124-95. The Nuggets would outscore the Trailblazers by 15 points in the first quarter and then by 17 in the fourth. On the losing end, the Trailblazers were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard out of Mercer, C.J. McCollum. C.J. McCollum would finish with 21 points and 2 steals in 30 minutes as he shot 7 for 17 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. And then on the winning end of this matchup, the Denver Nuggets were led in scoring by the reigning NBA MVP, Nikola Jokic. He finished with 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists as he played 28 minutes. He shot 11 for 17 from the field, a perfect 3 for 3 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. And with this win, the Denver Nuggets are now 9-4, and with this loss, the Portland Trailblazers are now 6-8. Taking one last look at what went down in the Staples Center, the Los Angeles Clippers hosted the Chicago Bulls after the Lakers played there earlier in the day. The Bulls would end up beating the Clippers 100-90 as they went on to outscore the Clippers by 13 in the first quarter and virtually rode that momentum through the end of the game. On the losing end, the Los Angeles Clippers were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard, Paul George. He finished with 27 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists in 41 minutes. He shot 7 for 25 from the field, 2 for 10 from 3, and he made all 11 of his free throw attempts. Their starting shooting guard, Eric Bledsoe, finished with 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists in 36 minutes as he shot 7 for 14 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and he made all 5 of his free throw attempts. On the winning end of this matchup, the Chicago Bulls were led in scoring by their starting small forward, DeMar DeRozan. He would finish with 35 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists in 38 minutes as he shot 12 for 16 from the field. He made his only three-pointer of the night, and he would end up shooting 10 for 11 from the foul line. And then their starting shooting guard out of UCLA, Zach Levine, would finish with 29 points and 8 rebounds in 38 minutes. He shot 11 for 27 from the field, 6 for 13 from 3, and he made his only free throw on the night. With this win, the Chicago Bulls are now 9-4 on the year. And then, of course, with this loss, the Los Angeles Clippers are now 8-5. That is currently what the NBA is looking like following yesterday's Sunday slew of matchups. And then taking a look at what's going on with soccer with FIFA World Cup qualifying. Looking first, Croatia was able to beat Russia 1-0 off of an own goal. Germany was able to beat Armenia 4-1 as their first goal came from their elite center attacking mid who now plays for Chelsea, Kai Havertz. And İlkay Gündoğan, their midfielder who plays for Man City, was able to get 2 goals, one of them off of a penalty kick. Additionally, Portugal fell short to Serbia picking up a 2-1 win. Spain was able to beat Sweden 1-0 off of an 86-minute goal from Alvaro Morata. And that's really what's going on in the world of soccer as of right now. And as all of today's exhibitions play out, once all of the games are done, I will come back tomorrow on Tuesday, November 16th for another episode of The Elite. But first, I want to thank the ESPN, NCAA, NFL, and NBA websites for giving me the facts and figures that I needed in order to do this episode. I want to thank everyone for listening to all 43 minutes of this piece. I do apologize if I butchered any of the names because I do plan on getting them right. But with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode of The Elite tomorrow. And until then, peace. I'll catch you with another piece tomorrow, and peace out.